And then again, that was in July 1947, Nehru protested. And then in December 1948, there was the second Dutch police action where the army, masuk ke Jawa Tengah, they went into central Java. And Nehru protested again to the United Nations. And not only that, he held a conference in New Delhi called the Inter-Asia Conference on Indonesia.
Waktu ke Jawa Tengah, waktu protes Jawa Tengah ada di film ini, ada di film itu, Nehru. Tidak ada.
No.
Okay.
He visits.
This is a background.
There's no historical record of that. This is all original footage shot in Indonesia.
Okay.
And as a result of that conference, within 7 days. Days, the United States, the conference began on the 20th of January 1949, and on the 28th of January, as a result of pressure from the United States of America, the UN announced that it was the Dutch must create a framework for the creation of a constituent assembly in Indonesia by July 1949, and that Indonesia must achieve sovereignty as a separate nation at the latest by July 1950. So that was very important policy of the United Nations. So that was why Nehru was very important. He was by then he was a very effective international figure.
Peran Nehru sangat penting juga di dalam proses kemerdekaan.
That's right.
Awal-awal kemerdekaan
and I think the Indonesian people, whether they were in Denpasar or whether they were in Bandung or Jogja or wherever, they knew the importance of Nehru because they knew their own contemporary history. Now, just say, how did this film get to Australia? That's the question we haven't discussed yet.
Anda kan memang sangat konsentrasi melakukan penelitian tentang Indonesia, politik, budaya dan sebagainya melalui film, begitu ya. Dan ternyata
yes, well there is. I'll tell you this. I mean, during the New Order period, there were a number of films suppressed, and there's one held in Sinematek, which is amazing, and that is the film Mat Doer.
Mat Doer.
By Nya Abbas Akub.
And
this is a satire, a political allegory about the transfer of power and how and the corruption involved, the transfer of power from Sukarno to Suharto. And that exists only as a poor copy from a colour negative of
film
in black and white, a black and white copy made from a colour negative. Because the film was actually produced by the department Penerangan. They didn't understand the script, the screenplay. The screenplay is still in the Perpustakaan here. And they allowed the film to be made, and when they saw it, they were horrified because they knew that this was a very critical of Suharto. And in the film, Sukarno, his name is Sambar Geledek. Lightning flash. And Suharto, dia dianggap, kalau mereka bicara dengan dia, mereka bilang munafik, namanya munafik. So the staff who authorized the production of the film were horrified, and the negative was destroyed, and all existing copies. But one print was made secretly at the payment of Nya Abbas, who had made the film, and he could only make it from the colour negative before it was destroyed, but he couldn't afford to pay for a colour print. So he made a black and white print. And if you make a black and white print from a color negative, the quality is not so good.
Ya, Anda juga menonton film-film zaman sekarang ya, Indonesia?
Not so much, because I have other work to do, and I feel that if I write too much, people won't know which book of mine to read. I have studied between 1950
Saya tahu.
and 2020, right? Now, if I keep on going, produce more books. Now, I know people who have written on Chinese film, they've written 5 books. I don't know which one to read. I think I've said enough. And I've said it directly and concretely and not too much sort of, it's economical in what I say.
Ya. Enggak, maksud saya bertanya itu, Anda kan bisa menemukan bahwa film-film zaman dulu, Maduer, film ini dan sebagainya, bisa untuk melacak sejarah Indonesia.
Yeah,
Politik, oke?
they have something to say
Ya,
about
something, ya, oke. Kan? Dan saya ingin mengatakan bahwa sineas-sineas Indonesia pada waktu itu sangat cerdas, kritis, independen.
Very clever. Look, I think now I have recently had to do another article for a book. Not a book, it's an edited book. I've done a 12,000 word chapter.
Sekarang Anda menemukan film Indonesia sekarang seperti waktu-waktu itu? Film-film
not as
Indonesia.
much. You see, I think that in my book, which
di buku Anda,
I'll bring over in a moment.
Ya.
There are 4 wonderful political allegories made in Indonesia between, say, 1955 and 2002. But you see, after 2002, there is no need for political allegory, not so much need, because it's a much freer society, so you can speak openly. But Tamu Agung, 1955, Usma Ismail, that is a satire on Sukarno, which Sukarno actually liked. He said, Sukarno said, how is it that such a clever film has been made about me? He said, I am flattered, even though it was critical of him, right?
Satir,
That's typical of Sukarno. He had very flexible reactions. Dia orang karet, dia bukan orang kaku, right? Okay. Now, the second film, the amazing allegory, is Maduer, which I've already described. The third one is My Sky, My Home, Langitku, Rumahku, by Slamet Raharjo, which was only released in Indonesia for 2 or 3 days and then withdrawn, but was shown widely in Australia and elsewhere. And that is talking about the class gap in Indonesia, the gap between the rich and the poor, and the effect on poor children. And it's a film about a friendship between 2 boys. And in that film, it's not just about the social situation in terms of the class gap and poverty. There are schoolroom discussions which ask questions like, who is the head of Indonesia? How many heads of Indonesia? How many presidents have there been in Indonesia? What is the longest time someone has been a president? So all of this raised difficult issues, and so it was withdrawn. And then the fourth film, maybe I've forgotten the title, is Garam Nugroho's film about West Papua.
Papua ya, tentang Papua.
Yes, and which begins with a political allegory about a Papuan boy who sees an Indonesian woman from Java weeping. And the reason the film implies, it doesn't say directly that she's weeping because her friend was a Papuan guy and he's now been killed, possibly by the Indonesian army. And the film starts with allegory, but it ends with reality, because the end of the film shows the funeral of Taze Elaway, who was one of the people supporting separation from Indonesia, though he did, and he was accused by the army of saying this in his house at a meeting. And then he was arrested and he died in captivity. So the film moves from allegory to reality, right? Now, if you look at, in a recent article, I was asked to explain what allegory is, and I took the examples. The example I took is Chaplin's film, The Great Dictator. Charlie Chaplin,
Charlie Chaplin.
which is a political allegory about Hitler.
Yeah.
And I also mentioned, because these are the textbook examples of allegory, the film Duck Soup
Yeah.
by the Marx Brothers, where the scene's discussing how World War One began. Right?
Yeah. Bung
But
David.
wait, let me just say, none of these films are made in the country they satirize.
Was
The four Indonesians that I talk about, the four political allegories that I talk about, they're made in Indonesia and they're about Indonesia. You have to go to a country like Czechoslovakia to find films of a similar kind, where the filmmakers are brave enough to, in a repressive society, to make films which allegorize or create parallels about what's going on in their society. So that's why I think they're such good films. But you know, I also argue in my book that the early films of Usma, which use the mode of production of Italian neorealism, which was obvious thing to do, because how else could they have made the films? They do things more than the Italian neorealist films do, because they criticize some of the behavior of the freedom fighters. Right? Italian neorealist films never criticize. It's always about the brave Italian partisans versus the crooked fascists and the Germans. But these Indonesian films talk about problems within the independence movement, like the shooting of people, left-wingers surrendering at Madiun in 1948. That's in what is it? The Long March. The film opens with a flashback to that.
Yeah.
At least the copy you have in your archive, but the copy shown on TV is deleted.
Darah dan doa ya. Ini.
So what I'm what I'm really saying is that the quality of what and the bravery of what Indonesian filmmakers did is underestimated. They are very interesting films in a world context.
Yeah.
They're not just things of interest to Indonesians, and that's what my books try to argue.
Ya, jadi.
Please let me speak.
Oke, ya untuk dunia ya. Nah, ini kalau ini bisa menjadi buku tersendiri dong. Anda bicara tentang awal-awal kemerdekaan dan peran Nehru.
No, I won't make this in. I don't at this stage. I won't make it into. In the article that I've done recently for the edited book, I mention this film.
Ya, filmnya.
Okay, but I don't have a whole chapter on it. It's just one of a number of films.
Ya.